What's up, everybody? On today's show, tidbits from Tennessee, Oklahoma, Mizzou, A&M, and what is going on over at Alabama. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along on today's show. Our buddy Luke Robinson, host of Locked On Bama, is going to join us to tell us what is going on at Alabama with Kalen DeBoer and how are the Tide fans feeling about dysfunction in Tuscaloosa. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. All right, let's dive right into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
Now we start over at Tennessee as Dylan Sampson is having a heck of the year as the starting running back over for the Tennessee Volunteers, and he's got a chance to make some history, some of the oldest records in Tennessee's football history. Through 7 games, Dylan Sampson has already rushed for 17 touchdowns. And the Vols take the field again against Kentucky in Week 10. He will need just one more touchdown to tie the program's single-season rushing record that was set nearly a century ago. You got to go back to 1929, where Gene McEver rushed for 18 touchdowns, led the Vols to an undefeated season under Bob Neyland. Almost 95 years later, Sampson is poised to tie and break that record. So pretty crazy stuff there. Dylan Sampson, he is getting it done on the ground, and those rushing touchdowns, plenty more to come. Now, as for Tennessee and what's their ceiling this year? Can they run the table? Can they win a national championship? Well, Greg McElroy on his Always College Football podcast addressed that. He said, look, Tennessee is really, really close to being a championship contender. In a one-game season in the playoffs, how many of y'all feel really good about consistently moving the ball against that defense? And defense travels. I still believe there's a place for defense to win championships, and that defense is fantastic at all 3 levels. Now, offensively, he says if this team moving forward, can continue to run the ball the way that they've run it. If Nico can start to hit 2 deep balls a game, that might be all they need. That might be it. He hit 2 against Alabama. All he's got to do is hit 2 deep balls a game because of the way they defend and the way they run the football. Tennessee is in a great spot. Now, there was a little controversy. If you guys missed this earlier in the week, Chris Stewart on the Alabama broadcast calling the game on Saturday claimed that Tennessee was piping in fake crowd noise during the game. Tennessee Athletic Director Danny White dismissed that claim on Monday, taking to Twitter saying, no, we don't. Just 100,000 beautiful, booming, big orange voices. A UT spokesman also refuted Stewart's comment, as did tight ends coach Alex Abel at the Knoxville Quarterback Club, saying, I have been places where they do pump in the crowd noise. It is 100% legit in that building. A.J. McCarron, former Alabama quarterback, he took to social media, tweeting out 100% they do, meaning Tennessee does pipe in crowd noise. Tennessee, like we said, they've denied using any artificial means to pump up the crowd noise. So we'll let you decide. Tennessee fans say, no, it's completely legit, but some Alabama folks saying, oh, no, they pump in crowd noise. Over at Texas A&M, Mike Elko getting ready for his biggest test of his coaching career there in College Station. Number 8 LSU coming to town, and the coach announcing they want a blackout. They have called for a blackout of Kyle Field on Saturday night. Now, the good news is at least it's starting to get a little bit cooler in Texas. Still pretty hot, but I couldn't imagine if this were like an afternoon game in September where it's like 102 degrees and ask everybody to black out Kyle Field. But it's a night game and shouldn't be too hot there in College Station. Saturday is the 63rd meeting between Texas A&M and LSU. Became an annual series back in 2012 when A&M joined the conference and was in the SEC West. Going to be a big one. Both teams dropped their season openers, but have won out since and are both undefeated in SEC play. Monster game. We're going to preview more on that game on tomorrow's show right here on Locked On SEC. Over at Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz, look, he pays attention to what people say out there. He likes to crack jokes sometimes on his weekly press conference addressing the Missouri media. He gave some comic relief about their big trip down to Tuscaloosa to play Alabama. Asked about how they're going to defend. He said, well, we're going to try Dan Lanning's approach and just play 12 men. We'll just see how it works, add an extra rusher, see if anybody notices. Funny stuff. That comes on the heels, of course, as Oregon, late in the Ohio State game, put 12 men on the field to run some seconds off, knowing they would get the penalty, but wanted to eat up clock. And it'll be interesting to see how Mizzou defends. Some of their active pass rushers were active last week in the win over Auburn. Certainly, they've got some big-time receivers going up against that Alabama young secondary. We'll see what they're able to do, but that'll be a big one. 2:30 Central on ABC. Mizzou at Alabama. Over at Oklahoma, we know Brent Venables fired his offensive coordinator on Sunday. He spoke with reporters on Tuesday and said, look, we have been an abomination on offense this year. Oklahoma's averaging just 22 points a game. That's outside the top 100 in all college football. Sooners have not averaged fewer than 30 points per game in a single season since 2005. They were on pace for their worst scoring output in a season since 1998. That was the last year of the John Blake era, before, of course, Bob Stoops took over. But only 2 FBS teams are averaging fewer yards per play than the Sooners. Only 6 teams are averaging fewer yards per pass play. It's been bad. Venables said it's been a group that we have fallen short in terms of the wide receivers and scoring some points. But Venables asked what he's looking for his next offensive coordinator hire, which he'll presumably make this offseason. They were asked him about basically all ties to recent guys who've held that job, guys who have ties to OU. He said, quote, I couldn't care less about OU ties. It doesn't matter to me at all. They're just going to want the best man for the job. Over at Texas, College Game Day announcing their best rating season ever. That was before Saturday's pregame from Austin, but the ratings report came out yesterday, and the show's ratings got even better. Last Saturday's live show from Austin was the most watched Week 8 show ever, with 2.3 million viewers, including a staggering 3 million viewers during the final hour of the show. The ratings peaked at 3.8 million viewers. Like we said, College Game Day having one of their best seasons ever. Now, they've spent it in a lot of SEC venues. Unfortunately, they're going to Big Ten country this week for Indiana, Washington. Ugh. Although some Auburn fans watching that game. Indiana coach, is that their future head coach? We'll see. Over at Alabama, Jeremy Bernard, wide receiver, catching passes from Jalen Milroe. He was asked by the media what his message has been to Milroe on their early season struggles. He said, look, my message is don't listen to any of the doubters, the naysayers. I always tell them I'm always going to have your back regardless of what anybody else says. Just continue to tell him that so he doesn't get down on himself. Peter Burns on SEC Network sent a message yesterday to Alabama fans saying, Bama fans, relax. I see what's happening right now is that Alabama fans almost turning on Kalen DeBoer. Do they not remember how Nick Saban did in year 1? Sometimes these things take a little time to get going. He said, what has doomed the other university in that state, Auburn, is that for a fan base, they weren't happy. It affected their recruiting, affected their transfer portal. Don't go full Auburn because it took them a decade to get things kind of right. Relax a little bit. Kalen DeBoer will be just fine. Now, quick recruiting tidbit. Alabama did get a major commitment on Tuesday, flipping 4-star tight end Marshall Pritchett from North Carolina, 6'5", 220 pounds. And said that he wants to bring the first Mackey Award home to Tuscaloosa. So big pickup there in recruiting for Kalen DeBoer. And lastly, the SEC announced yesterday their 2024 football legends, a former football star from each of the conference's 16 schools, will be honored surrounding various events at the SEC Championship game in Atlanta in December. Some great names making this list, like Barrett Jones from Alabama, Ken Hamlin from Arkansas, Marcus McNeil from Auburn, Rex Grossman of Florida, Terrence Edwards at Georgia, Dickie Lyons from Kentucky, Andrew Whitworth at LSU, Dexter McCluster, Ole Miss, Fletcher Cox, Mississippi State, Chase Daniel at Mizzou, Corey Miller at South Carolina, Eric Berry, Tennessee, Luke Jokel at Texas A&M, and Ricky Anderson at Vanderbilt. Now, here's where it gets kind of funny. They include Oklahoma and Texas in here. Oklahoma will honor Barry Switzer, and Texas will honor Vince Young. As some people on Twitter said, of course, who can forget SEC legend Vince Young? It's a little weird. It's a little awkward. It's going to be weird for everybody. But look, I felt that way when we saw the SEC basketball clips, and they were playing clips of Blake Griffin. I'm like, wait, Blake Griffin never played in the SEC. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. He's an SEC legend now because Texas and Oklahoma come into the SEC, and I guess all the history just transfers over. So that night you watched Vince Young win the national championship over USC. That was actually SEC legend Vince Young beating Big Ten legend Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart in USC. So how about that? All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, our conversation with Luke Robinson, Locked On Bama. That's coming your way in just a sec. First, this episode presented to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. When you are hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn is not just another job board. They're going to help you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Go post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Again, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Rolling along here, Locked On SEC, and excited to talk with our buddy Luke Robinson of Locked On Bama. As Luke, I just thought, man, second loss for Alabama, and we're not even out of the month of October. I just had to get you on to talk about the pulse of the Alabama fan base and what is going on. I know you're a level-headed guy. A lot of the fans are not, but where are we, man? How are we feeling taking a second loss, and one to Tennessee, no less? I know that's the one that, you know, of all the losses, Auburn and Tennessee, those are the two that would really stick in the craw. But losing this one for a second time in 3 years, what's the state of the fan base right now?
It's pretty sketchy right now. And here's the thing. I think everybody could handle losing to Tennessee if you hadn't already lost to Vanderbilt. You know, and I think if you had beaten Tennessee and lost to Vanderbilt, I think we could say, okay, that was a, glitch in the system. But it's the Vandy loss is really the one that everybody should be concerned about. Clearly, Alabama is the better team there. You can argue whether Alabama is actually better than Tennessee or not. I mean, they had a lot of self-inflicted wounds. There's no doubt. I don't want to take anything away from Tennessee. Obviously, I'm not the biggest fan in the world of SEC officials, and I don't think anybody is right now. I think the world is seeing how bad these guys are apparently at their jobs, and I hate saying that because I know how hard of a job it is. But regardless, I'm not jumping off the bridge. Tennessee is a very good ball club. They very well may end up in the college football playoff. And they have some troubles in the first half, but they are a very good squad. So there's no shame in losing to that team, right? The Vanderbilt loss upped the ante all the way across the board. And now I still believe 100%, nobody wants to hear it, that if Alabama wins out, they're in the playoffs, 100%. Like, I don't doubt it one iota, because you will have a win over Georgia. You'll have a win over LSU at their place. You'll have that win at Wisconsin, which is looking very good. And your losses are, understandable. They're not the Vandy loss, but they're still in the top 25, and that counts for something. So I don't think the world is coming to an end. It will if Alabama loses to Missouri.
It's interesting. I mean, we said whoever takes this job, it was going to be very difficult, and you were going to face immeasurable pressure. And the honest thing is, there was no right person. I mean, there was no, outside of maybe Kirby. I mean, there was nobody out there that would be the perfect replacement for Nick Saban. That said, what's the thought on Kalen DeBoer? Because I kind of like his level-headed mentality, where he's not too high after a win, not too low after a loss. He's very calm and measured, but it seems like that Bama fan base doesn't like that. They're so used to the Saban throwing things. And we saw this at LSU too, when they went from Saban to Les Miles. Les Miles, when you messed up, was more the guy that would put his arm around you and comfort you. And people want you kicking a chair and throwing a clipboard and all that kind of stuff. So it's a different dynamic. But what's the fan base's reaction right now to Kalen DeBoer?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are just trying to get used to his new demeanor. It is very difficult to go from Saban to anybody else. And you're right, it would have been a difficult task for any coach in America. I don't think there is. Even Kirby Smart, I think it would have been difficult, right? Look, as far as DeBoer, I think he's also feeling his way around the South. I mean, he's a South Dakota guy. He's been coaching in the West Coast, and now he's in the Southeastern Conference, and it's a different animal. I mean, it's just different. And I know that everybody loves to say, hey, our conference is great, whatever. It's not the SEC. And like, speaking of things that you go off on tangents on, that shirt right there he wore for the Vanderbilt game that you see in the picture. I mean, I had a mini rant on that saying, let's not do that again. And it really didn't mean much of anything. And it got about 850,000 views on TikTok. I don't even have TikTok. So it tells you even the folks that consider themselves level-headed like me are still having moments where they're like, hey, we don't like it when he wears just some random T-shirt you get from Fanatics to a game, or when you smile after a loss or after a very close win against South Carolina or whatever. I'm not as worried, really, even though I went off on that rant. I'm not as worried about those things, really. I'm more worried that, hey, I don't care about the scenario. You always beat Vanderbilt. Now, I would understand it if Mike Shula had lost to Vanderbilt or if Mike DeBoer's had lost to Vanderbilt. I don't understand a program that is full of Sabanites losing to Vanderbilt. That is hard to stomach. So what he has done is shortened his own leash with the fan base. And look, I'll say this, though. I'm a believer in Kalen DeBoer. Having said all that, I believe in him. Give him a little bit of time. He is 7 games into his tenure. I mean, let's just chill for a minute. Because I'm going to tell you something. Again, this can all be forgiven, and that's the good thing about this expanded playoff. Even though I wasn't necessarily for it, the good thing is if Alabama wins out, they're in the playoffs. Now, they won't get a bye. They won't. They might not even host, but they're in the playoffs. And that's going to be the new goal. It's like the NCAA tournament. The new goal is going to be to make the NCAA basketball tournament. The new goal is going to be to make the college football playoffs. Forget about conference championships. They're nice. But in the end, if you don't get in the playoffs, it doesn't matter.
Well, and look, the way the season's playing out, anything's still possible. I mean, if Bama were to win out, who's to say that a couple of these SEC teams at the top don't end up with 2-3 losses? And maybe Bama does find their way still into the game. It's not likely right now, but it's not the craziest thing. What's interesting to me, Luke, is that, look, I thought the defense would take a little bit of a step back. Kane Womack, I think jury's still out on him as the DC, but when you lose Caleb Downs, you lose Dallas Turner, you lose Justin Aboigbe, Chris Braswell, you knew you were going to be a little bit less good on defense. But I thought the offense would be way better, especially with DeBoer and Nick Sheridan and offensive-minded guys, and look what they did with Michael Penix. Why is Milroe not – I mean, we look at his numbers now, Luke. I mean, through – we're 3/4 of the way into the season. He's got 13 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. I just thought he'd be putting up Heisman numbers. I thought the running backs would be eating Miller and Haynes. Feels like they don't even want to run the football at times. What's going on there?
Yeah, Milroe has gone from hero to GOAT in a sense in a lot of people's eyes. The Georgia game, I mean, he looked awesome. He looked like the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman, right? And since then, it's been pretty much downhill. Since that first drive against Vanderbilt where he throws it off Ryan Williams' helmet, I think, and ends up being a pick six, it seems like his confidence is gone. And it's very troubling to see. I mean, his performance against Tennessee was clearly the worst performance he's had as Alabama's starting quarterback. It's not really even all that close. He looked terrible. And it's not like the opportunities weren't there. The opportunities were there. He was overthrowing Ryan Williams. And then there's the matter of the fact that he targets Ryan Williams 18 times. Y'all know Locked on Bama is a Ryan Williams podcast. I think he's awesome. I think he's incredible. I love it. But targeting him 18 times is kind of nuts. I mean, I love him, but there are other dudes on this team. It's not like he's Randy Moss and you've got a bunch of other guys who have gout and can't run routes. I mean, he's good, but there are other players on this team. And I look back at Amari Cooper, let's say. He only had 13 targets in that incredible performance he had in 2014 against Florida, where he had 10 catches and 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, that it just boggles the mind that Ryan Williams was targeted that much. And it's almost like, was that the game plan, or is this the only guy Jalen Milroe trusts, or what? It's just weird. And I don't know what the cause is. And also, a lot of people have brought this up. I'm not going to pretend to be a body language expert, but it is odd to see the supposed leader of your team sitting on the bench, sort of staring out into the ether, not really seemingly involved mentally into the game. It seems like, again, that may just be his style. It may not mean anything, but as a casual observer, you look at it and go, hey, why isn't the leader of this team going, hey guys, we got this, let's get it going? When every NFL game tape or something like that you see of Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, they're going to their teammates and going, y'all, you keep your head up and I'll get us there. That's what you want to see out of your quarterback, And I love Jalen Milroe. Let me say this. I'm a Jalen Milroe defender to the end, but it's just weird to see where we are with him right now.
Maybe shouldn't be doing the, shooting the shot.
Look, the jump shot thing, and apparently Kalen DeBoer has said that's something they coach now in a roundabout way. God, I hope not. Please don't do that anymore. Please don't. Please get rid of the jump shots, get rid of the T-shirts, and let's start from there.
More with Luke Robinson in just a second, but we'll remind you guys, today's episode presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Hey, college fans, NFL fans, you can start your season with a big return over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets, and that's at FanDuel. And you can get started today with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Of course, plenty of action on all the games happening this weekend. We tell you OU at Ole Miss. I got Ole Miss as a 21-point favorite. So if you want to take Ole Miss minus the 21 to cover, you can do that. If you like Arkansas minus the 7 on the road at Mississippi State, if you like Bama minus the 13.5 at home at Mizzou, or you want to go the other way, whatever it is, you can do so over at FanDuel.com. Get signed up today. Download the FanDuel app, but get signed up first at FanDuel.com. Again, they are America's #1 sports book. It's interesting, and to your point, yeah, I mean, this program has recruited 5-star wide receivers left and right. It shouldn't be all just we're boomer busted Ryan Williams and there's nobody else. Like, I saw Caleb Odom was retweeting some stuff about Milroe, and it's like, he's a 5-star. Like, I don't know. It's just like, find somebody. Somebody has to emerge. What about defensively? Losing Keon Sabb, they said he's going to miss some time, at least some time. So I'm assuming that's a couple of weeks, but it seemed like to me, Luke, he was kind of, you lose Caleb Downs, who was the all-everything freshman a year ago, but he was a good replacement, a leader in that secondary. Now you lose him. Seems like it's just Malachi Moore and a bunch of kids back there.
Yeah, it's a problem. And then you got, I don't know how much of a problem it'll be this week. You got Theo Weiss, you got Luther Burden coming into town. They're good dudes, right? But in 3 weeks, essentially, you have LSU on the docket. Now, they sling the ball over the field. They've got great wide receivers, Lacey Anderson, who was at Alabama, who transferred back to LSU. He's from Louisiana. They got dudes. So, yeah, that's going to be a problem. Now, you say, okay, well, what do? You put more pressure on the quarterback? That hadn't been something we've been doing. We haven't been doing a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Maybe we're going to have to ramp that up. I don't know. But there's a lot to figure out. And Bray Hubbard, who's going to be thrust into action, has got a lot to learn very quickly. Let me say this about Keon Sabb, too. First of all, shout out to Malachi Moore. This is a guy who took a lot of heat after the Vanderbilt game, rightfully so. He shouldn't have acted that way. He did come out and apologize. Against Tennessee, he played one of the best games I've seen him play. He had an interception. He caused a fumble. He looked fantastic. Then Keon Sabb, this is a guy that's come in, and he didn't make anybody forget about Caleb Downs. But I would say he was having as good of a year as Caleb Downs is at Ohio State right now. I think that's a very fair statement.
Yeah, it's interesting too. There's some guys that, like, when I watch Bama, they just pop to me. One of them is it feels like every time Justin Jefferson is in there, that dude makes a play. Like I I don't know why he doesn't play more. Well, I guess they rotate guys and all that kind of stuff, and they got some good linebackers ahead of him. But that's a guy that just when I see him on the field, he seems to stand out and make a play. But I don't know, man. I look around that defense, and I just thought like even Jahad Campbell, I thought was going to be like a big time leader in this team and just like be the emotional. Are they lacking leadership? Is that what it feels like? Emotional or even just leading by example?
Boy, you hate to say that about somebody because it really does seem so insulting, right? But what I think out this team is lacking is one of those actual dogs. Now, I think Jahad Campbell is a fantastic player. He's a specimen, but he had some moments in the Tennessee game that weren't good for him. He had a moment in the Vanderbilt game where the Vanderbilt player ran him over and went into the end zone. I think Jahad Campbell's fantastic and he's got a pro future, but he's certainly got some more to learn. But what I think they're missing is a Rolando McClain, a Reuben Foster, a CJ Mosley, a Dante Hightower, somebody that'll get in everybody's face and say, okay, we're going to stop them on this drive, period, end of discussion. No excuses. And it feels like Alabama doesn't have that guy right now. I've been waiting for that guy to develop. Again, I think Jahad Campbell can be that guy. He's a physical specimen. He brings the lumber when he hits you. Justin Jefferson might be that guy, but he's going to need to be more vocal. I mean, I think that, there's got to be somebody that steps up and says, I'm the dude, y'all follow me.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who that guy is. And again, if they do get that, maybe, they can rally the troops and make a run with this thing. Let's get into this weekend, Luke. Missouri coming to town and Alabama sitting at about a 2-touchdown favorite. If Bama's going to win this one handily, the one thing is they've been very good at home. But Brady Cook, he leaves the game last week, goes to the hospital, comes back, rallies the troops, and they beat Auburn. Seems to me like it starts up front. They got to slow down the run of Marcus Carroll, Nate Noel. But to your point, Mookie Cooper, Theo Weiss, Luther Burden, they got some dudes on that receiving side for Mizzou.
Yeah, they do. Their running back is a little beat up, I believe, and their running game certainly is taking a dip from last year. And so they're going to be slinging the ball all over the field. I wholeheartedly believe that. The irony is I think both quarterbacks are a little banged up. Now, I know Tyler Booker, I believe the coaching staff has come out and said, Jalen Milroe is fine. He sure looks like he's not fine. Now, again, casual observer, not anything insider. I don't think he's 100%. To be fair, I don't know that anybody's 100% this time in the football season. But Cook, obviously, for Missouri, I don't think he's 100% either, and I think that may play a factor. Look, Alabama's going to have to start playing with a sense of desperation. And I think this Alabama team, they have to know you cannot lose this game. You lose this game, everything's out the window completely. This may be a situation where you have some of those business decisions being made afterwards. I really believe that if you lose this game. But if Alabama is essentially in the playoffs right now, can't lose again. You got to win this game. Then you got to go to LSU and win that game. You get a week off. Everybody can rest up. Then you got Mercer. And you're like, okay, let's take a little bit of a break. Then you're at Oklahoma, a team that is searching for its own identity, may have its own set of business decisions. And then you got Auburn and no telling what they're going to be by the time you get to the Iron Bowl. So, and in a way, I think it benefits Alabama to not play in the SEC title game if they can win out and not have to play in that game. I think they're a lock for the playoff, and I think that's a much better scenario.
You said if they lose this week, there will be some business decisions. I'll give you another business decision. Discussing buyout money on how do we get rid of DeBoer? Like, good Lord! Like, I saw some people actually saying that after this past weekend. Like, let the guy get through a full season first before we start talking about getting rid of him already? Goodness gracious.
It's dumb. And look, he's a good coach. I think he's also handcuffed a little bit here. He may have wanted to, let's say, discipline Malachi Moore a little more. He may have wanted to. I don't think he was able to because Malachi Moore was one of the guys who stood in DeBoer's corner, and I think that if he had disciplined him any more or some kind of way publicly or admonished him, I think he might have lost some people there, some of the seniors. And he's trying to keep the team together as best he can. And you look at Milroe, and again, maybe he's hurt. Maybe Ty Simpson should have come in. Again, all these are maybes. And I even made the case that instead of Ty Simpson starting Tennessee, it would have been better for him to come in like midway through the third where he doesn't have time to get nervous about anything. You're like, just Ty, get in there and see what you can do. But I think he's trying to keep this team together for a playoff run. I mean, he really is. And the only way you can do that is by keeping your senior leaders going. It's not a time to just abandon all hope and leave it all to newcomers and freshmen and year guys. I think this Alabama team is still playing for something. So I think Kalen DeBoer is trying to keep it together as best he can.
Last thing, did they make a mistake letting Eli Holstein go up to Pitt? Because they're undefeated right now with him at quarterback.
Well, I guess another way to ask that question, if Milroe had gone to Pitt, you think Pitt would still be undefeated? My answer is yes.
Probably, yeah.
So, I mean, would Alabama be undefeated? I mean, potentially, but I'm not going to put the Vanderbilt game solely at the feet of Jalen Milroe. I'm not going to necessarily put the Tennessee game solely at the feet of Jalen Milroe. I mean, there were some other things, but yeah, and I'm willing to give Milroe a pass for Tennessee. Again, it's just all exacerbated by that Vanderbilt loss.
Yeah, and to be fair, if Bama played Pitt's schedule, they're probably undefeated right now.
Undefeated.
So. Yeah. He is Luke Robinson. Check him out, Locked on Bama. Luke, always good to talk with you, man. Thanks for the time.
Appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Luke Robinson there of Locked on Bama. I'm Chris Gordy, Locked on SEC. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll be back tomorrow talking all things SEC right here at your home for talking all things SEC, Locked on SEC. Thank you for making us your first listen. For your second listen, check out Luke, Locked on Bama. He does a great job talking all things Alabama Crimson Tide. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked on SEC.